Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. $13,000 worth of revenge never looked so good. Today on rSpace, OP gets the last laugh. My wife asked for an open marriage and then asked to close it because she hated my new social life. I ended the marriage with 0 regrets and 0 alimony. Hey there, everyone. So I'm going to be here asking for advice, and the thing is, I sort of understand the angle everyone is going to say that I should take, especially considering the fact that this kind of story has been posted here before on multiple occasions. I, 39 male, have been married to my wife, 37 female, for 11 years now. We've certainly had some very rough years, but those were around the middle of our marriage. And at the point that we're at now, I really felt that we had overcome any major issues and had learned to live with each other pretty well. Unfortunately, it seems like I was very, very wrong about that, as I have just found out. But before I get into all of that, let me just try and provide you with some background on us and our marriage. I'm an academic and I work at the university in our city. I've always known that I wanted to be a researcher, and by the time that we met, I was already on the first steps of that journey. I'm glad to say that I've come really far, and as I like to say at every chance that I get, I've been able to work with an academic who eventually won a Nobel Prize. So that's pretty cool. But of course, I've done a whole lot of notable things on my own. So it's not like that's the only line I put out at parties. My wife, on the other hand, does okay. Though in her case, she's a business owner. It's not what she has always wanted to do, but life sort of took her down that route, and she's done well for herself. She owns a beauty salon, a place that you can go to get your nails and hair done. She's planning on expanding to a place that can do basic cosmetic things too, but that's still far ahead in the pipeline. Her credit isn't as good as mine, so the intention is for me to co-sign on a loan for her to go ahead with the expansion. The whole point is that after our rough years, we've been doing well enough financially, and since people have always quoted that as being one of the biggest reasons that couples end up divorcing, I felt a little more secure knowing that that wouldn't be our kind of problem. Well, money definitely wasn't our issue when the issue came up. Honestly, I think the entire reason why I'm dealing with this whole mess is because of the kind of people that my wife is now around for most of the day. The kind of gossip and nonsensical discussions that go on in a beauty salon are never good news, and I really think that this new problem stemmed from there. And no, this is a woman who planned to be an author, and that's the path that she was on when we met, so don't say that this is something that I should have envisioned. Anyway, the point is that one day my wife came up to me and told me that she wanted to have a discussion about our bedroom life. She said there was nothing intrinsically wrong with it, which is what I expected to hear because I genuinely do every single thing that she asks for, and I also do my best to learn better ways to please her in that regard. According to her, though, it was like having the best kind of burger every single day. And here's the part that almost made me laugh despite how uncomfortable the situation was. Sometimes you just want a hot dog. I struggled to tell if she was joking or not, but she was absolutely serious, which honestly surprised me because I had no inkling whatsoever that she felt like our bedroom life was monotonous. That part was quite a shocker to me. I'm sure I asked her about 4 or 5 times that everything whether she was being serious, but she kept insisting that she was. I asked whether it was negotiable to any degree or whether I was being served with some kind of ultimatum, but she only said, "It really won't make me happy if you don't strongly consider it." I think that was when I was able to tell that she was entirely serious, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I thought we had somehow gotten through the rough years, but that definitely wasn't the case. Because to me, as much as she might have expected me to just answer and say, "Sure, why not?" I hate the idea of non-exclusivity in any kind of romantic relationship. To me, it really defeats the purpose of it. At this point, I haven't given her an answer, but the last time that we spoke about it, she said, "You're acting like things won't be open for you too. It's not just me." But honestly, that doesn't make things any better for me, if I'm being honest. It really doesn't. So this is where I am right now. And while I know that the obvious answer that everyone here will give is for me to either say a solid no or kick her butt out to the curb, after 11 years of marriage, it's a lot harder than that. Is there no compromise I can make that I'm not thinking of, perhaps? Or is it possible that I might truly end up liking an open marriage? I was a little bit of a player myself during my college days, so it's not like I don't have the necessary skills to make things work. Anyway, I'd love to know what you all think about this and whether I'm making a massive mistake by even considering this in the first place. Edit. Okay, so it is clear that half of the people here really think that I'm a buffoon and aren't afraid to let me know in these less than savory terms. I get it. You wouldn't do what I'm doing. and that's fine. I'm not going to hate on you for that. But for me, letting go of this is a bit harder than that. To those who say I should see how it goes, but be ready to let her go if she backtracks, I'm fine with that, because I feel like this is such a silly thing to risk a marriage over. And if you ultimately can't even stick to your guns with it, that'll be enough to piss me off. Well, when a spouse brings up an open marriage, it's often less about spicing things up and more about them already eyeing the menu elsewhere. Let's be real, these things rarely end with both partners happily frolicking in fields of freedom. Update 1. Well, it has certainly been a while since my last post, and I've got to say that I'm making the most of this open marriage business. It wasn't my choice, but hey, might as well make the most of it, right? Just so you know, I eventually told her that I wasn't a big fan of this whole thing, and I was only agreeing to make her happy. But she didn't seem to care much about the fact that she was doing all of this to me essentially under duress. She took my agreement and ran with it. Well, I'm glad to say that I didn't stick around like a cuckold as she went out 2 nights a week. Instead, I decided to get my own action going, because I might as well make the best of the situation that she put me in. I really considered using all these dating apps at first, but then I decided against that and started being a little more flirtatious with some of the people that I knew at the university. Outside of working hours, of course. It was shocking how well that worked for me, especially because I was playing around in departments that are very far removed from mine. And the best part is that it was so easy for everyone to acknowledge that what we were doing had no strings attached. Maybe that's the advantage of casual things among adults our age. Or maybe I was just lucky with people I was choosing. Nobody was looking for anything more. And I realized how mature things were for me when one of 3 people that I had managed to get entangled with about 2 months into the arrangement invited me to a symposium that she was going to speak at. It wasn't meant to be a date or anything. It was just a very casual invitation. Despite the fact that a lot of people there were not from my field, I was able to network with them and hear some of the things that they were into, and I made sure to collect some of their cards before they left. Honestly, I feel like my social life has improved in the ways that I like, so not parties or clubs and things like that, and the openness of the marriage facilitated that. Yes, I'm still taking advantage of things, but it's hardly the best benefit I've gotten. It's been about 4 months since the entire arrangement came about, and things have gotten really good for me. My social life has definitely taken a major turn for the better, and it might soon start leaking into my personal life, as I'm making a lot of pretty cool connections, not entirely outside of my discipline. However, the problem is that it has become very clear that my wife doesn't like how much of a great social life I've gained. Apart from me hanging out with people who I give her the impression are very important people, she got visibly mad when I showed her pictures from that symposium, and she saw how attractive the speaker who invited me was. It's pretty clear that she's not able to stand the heat of her decision at this point, and I don't feel bad about it. In fact, it pisses me off more than anything else, because she knew I didn't want to do this. And as far as her own rendezvous, I really can't find myself caring that much. I think the moment that I agreed to her arrangement, a big connection to her kind of snapped in me. I won't say that I didn't care entirely, but after the 3rd or 4th week, I kind of learned to just tune things out, especially because I had started getting up to my own business too. That's just an update that I felt was worth giving, especially because it seems like her own move is backfiring. I don't feel a drop of guilt in me for however she might feel. Edit. Talk about perfect timing. Just about a day after writing this, she comes up to me and tells me that she wants us to talk about the open marriage situation. That part was very funny to me because either she was going to set some new rules to protect herself or she was going to call it off, and I was so right because it was the latter. She said that she didn't want to do it anymore because she realized it wasn't what I thought it would be. And then upon a little bit of a shouting match starting over her being the one who risked the sanctity of our marriage over that whim, she let it drop. You're busy feeling like you're more important than you are because you're making big fancy friends here and there. That's when I realized that it seemed like one of the things she might have been having an issue with, even more so than me sleeping with other people, was the fact that I was getting a pretty high-end social circle for myself. I guess that's the kind of life she wishes she had, but obviously in this case, I couldn't even bring her in since most of my initial contacts were people that stemmed from the marriage's new openness. How funny is that? So she had to watch the entire thing from the sidelines, and she must have been dying with jealousy. And because I was pissed off at the whole thing, I initially refused to close the marriage, and that really made her mad. I don't think I've seen her that mad since the bad years that we had, and I think that kind of just made up my mind for me. I agreed to close things right there, and she settled down. The only thing that she'll learn is that my own idea of close is very different from hers. Nothing says I didn't think this through like realizing your partner is better at playing the game you invented. She wanted to open the marriage to elevate her life, and instead, she's watching you level up, OP. Bravo. Update 2. I'll admit to those who said that a request for an open marriage should have been more than enough of a red flag to induce a divorce, but at that point, I really felt way too much about her to say goodbye. Thankfully, opening things did enough to make me pull away, and opening things actually upgraded my life in a way that I really didn't expect that it would. So I'm glad that I was too in love to let go. At least initially. Otherwise, I might have missed out on a lot of good for myself, and the fact that I didn't is enough to make me happy. So let me just give you the rundown of how things went after my last update here. I agreed to close things, but I knew that it was going to be the end. I feel like an open relationship of any kind simply has to be the status quo for the remainder of that relationship, or things will never be the same. I think that was the case with ours. I stopped seeing her the same after we officially opened things, and the moment she asked to end it, it felt like someone very stupidly trying to reverse completely avoidable damage after they had already caused it. The very next day, while I was at work, I searched up divorce lawyers, but I'll have to admit that it was hard to tell the ones that actually knew how to get the job done. It's crazy that I was able to ask some of the new friends I had made in recent months. The closer ones already knew about my whole open marriage situation, if they knew anything about divorce lawyers, and pretty quickly, one gave me a recommendation. It was the guy he had used himself, and apparently that guy did a great job. So the very next day, I contacted him, and before the end of the week, I had paid his retainer. The very next week, I had my wife served at her place of work, and that part did not go down well once she got back home. I mean, I didn't expect that it would, considering that she had no idea that I was going to divorce her. She had tried to call me like 15 times during the day, but I didn't pick a single one of them. By the time I got back home, since she had rushed back home when she couldn't reach me, it was a shouting match from the moment I closed my car door. It wasn't much of a match, I guess, since I wasn't shouting back. Once I got indoors, I told her that I was paying her for the open marriage. There was no way she took us through that and just expected things to go back to normal. That's what I wanted her to know. She didn't like that part at all, but I genuinely did not care, and I let her know. I agreed not out of free will, and even if things eventually did turn out okay for me, it had never been my choice. I told her to move out of the house, but she absolutely refused, and when things were starting to get too messy, I just packed up a few things and left instead. I had to stay in a hotel for some weeks after that, and I eventually got someone to stay with, so I wasn't running a hotel bill through the roof. Now, the person I was staying with was nice enough to say I should get a few more of my things, and I could store them in his house temporarily, so I went back to the house along with him. I'm so glad I didn't go alone, because this stupid witch had destroyed a lot of my things. Some of my favorite dress shoes had deep slashes in them. I had at least 2 expensive watches with their glass broken, and the entire place was a mess. She wasn't there at the time, but I made sure to record absolutely everything from the moment that we walked in. I was going to make sure that without a doubt, she'd pay me back for every single thing of mine that she had ruined. I guess this is why they say you should never leave them in the house after the divorce. I contacted my lawyer while I was still there, and he assured me he would make all of that damage work in my favor. I made sure to take the most expensive things that she damaged along with me. When we got to the actual divorce proceedings, she really tried to drive me insane. The reasonable request was that I'd keep the house, she'd pay me back for only the major things she had destroyed, and we'd leave without worries on alimony or her paying legal fees. But nope, she refused. She knew she needed alimony so bad, especially because my paychecks had bailed her business out of a tough point, one too many times. We absolutely couldn't reach an agreement, so at the end of the day, our case went in front of a judge. Thankfully, I had messages in the early days of the open marriage pointing out my displeasure with it. I had evidence of her destroying all of my things in rage, and I had pretty kick-butt counsel who pointed out how I had already done a lot in getting her and her salon up and running. She tried to make an argument that I was physically abusive to her in the marriage, and when the judge pointed out that suggesting an open marriage to a physically abusive spouse wouldn't be very smart, she tried to make it seem that was what spurred my violence towards her. He asked if she had a single hospital record to substantiate her claims, and she said she never went to a hospital after my assaults. He asked her for at least a photograph. She didn't have any since, "I never thought of taking selfies after the love of my life turned me into a punching bag." She cried a lot in the courtroom, but thankfully the judge didn't buy any of it. At the end of the day, she didn't get her way. I got the house, I got freed of alimony, I managed to get her to pay for all of my expensive things she had destroyed, which came to over $13,000. I thanked the watches for that, and she paid my legal fees too. It was a major win. The best part is that even after leaving her and her mess behind, I still have the social advantage that her open marriage gave me. That was the part that she hated the most, and even after taking away the entire marriage, that part isn't going anywhere. I love it so much. Maybe I would have saved myself a lot of trouble if I had left her butt earlier, but I guess that things go the way that they go for a reason, and I love the way that things went here. I love it. She tried to spin the "you're abusive" story, but the judge wasn't having it. Who knew that agreeing to an open marriage, because you apparently had to, would lead to such an impressive glow-up? Bravo on your success story, OP. Yeah, maybe it would have been easier to walk away earlier, but then we would have missed out on all of this. Thanks for sharing, OP. Proud of you. Thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.